Toes, toes, toes. Okay, no, that's not very fun. There we go. All right, folks, what's up? It's Shiny Tomat coming at you fresh for another day of Shiny Tomat Fridays. Hello. Hello. Welcome in, everybody. How you doing? Good to see you. We weren't dancing before the stream, but you know we could throw a little bit. Show me your best dance moves right now. How's it going, folks? Jesus. I started the stream extra early so that people could file in, and we are... There we go. There's chat. Here we go. Things are kind of dead right now, man. I mean, maybe it's me. Maybe it's a me thing, but... like, stream... No, you know what? I appreciate y'all. Thank you for being here. If you're here, much love to you. Much love to you, Shifty. Of course, my friend. Throwing down the toes in chat. How you doing? Mrs. Tomato. Hyping us all up. The Slayer, Matt Sully, is no. Welcome in, folks. Whiskey Fish, good to see ya. Oh, Magro, yo. How's it going? And over on the Twitch side of things, Maverick, thank you so much for hopping in chat. How's it going? Adam, good to see you. And Mezcone, hey. Let's get that chat started. People don't toes. Maverick, thank you for the sub. Thanks for getting us started off there. Folks, we've got some 4.0 and Pyro stuff to talk about today. I'm kind of tempted to wait until people get in, but honestly, we started late and I had a 5-minute stream start time. So if you're here, then you matter. If you're not, you're gonna miss out. That's unfortunate. Because this is all super fresh info that you've never seen before. No, I'm kidding. We're going over ISC from yesterday, and then we're going to look at CitizenCon last year. We're talking a little bit about how they're changing up locations and points of interest, starting with 4.0 and Pyro, probably to be brought back to Stanton at some point. But this is a deep dive into how locations are about to change in 4.0. So thank you for coming if you're here live. If you're not, it's still a good time. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy this. The Overwatch and SCL. Ah, is that it? Is that it? Jared said people said he looked tired on this ISC, but I think his skin is glowing. Skin glows when you're tired, you know? Recently saw some pandemic content, and man, did he look out of it. Yeah, that was a rough period, wasn't it? That old thing, little pandemic. Space Marine, what's up? How you doing? Good to see you. Folks, before we get started, I'm going to point you over towards the main channel on YouTube. I just released a video yesterday looking at the FPS weapons coming to 4.0. And it is, you know, what I've gathered from that video's performance is that people don't want to hear about FPS weapons. But go give it a look. It's pretty good. It's got some decent info in there about how the update's coming along and what they have planned for weapons in general. And it helps, you know? As people watch the video, YouTube pushes it out to more folks, and unfortunately YouTube pushed this one out to just about nobody. So obviously trying to let people know that a video did come out so you can check it out if you're interested in FPS stuff, or if you're interested in 4.0 or anything else related to that. Space AKs, Volt weapons, crossbows, whatever it might be. But that's the newest feature watch. Mezcone, you're doing bounties near Crusader with the workmates. Nice. Live bounties, PvP, or NPC bounties? Love them talking about taking what they learned from Stanton and improving upon it with Pyro. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't watched this yet, so I'm interested to hear what they say. But after we watch this, we are going to go back to one of the panels from CitizenCon and talk about some of the other things they added into how they're building out outposts, how they want to funnel people into combat, and like just sort of switch things up. It's an interesting talk, and I think it'll go well with this one. Travis, hey y'all. How's it going? Maverick, it's on your list for this weekend's watch. Well, thank you. Any list is a good list. Jordan, thank you. Very appreciate you. Interested in the content. I'm interested in your opinion on the content. Opinions go a long way. They help me make more videos. Just watching. It's not your cargo. Your cargo. Whose is it? The pirates? Whoever shoots you down? Alright, so like I said, today is all about Pyro stuff. Our intro is not too long this time. And we're going to jump right into ISC from yesterday. This is going to be just like all the times. I'm past the reaction stuff. That is too simple. We're gonna build this up a little bit and do some more deep diving into other content while we're watching this. So I might get a little distracted. We might go back and forth. We might get tangented off and never even finish the episode. But the goal for today is to add some context to level design in Star Citizen, particularly 4.0. So let's get started. See what they have to say.
Inside Star Citizen is many different things to many different people. But at the center of it all is our desire to educate about the very nature of game development itself. And in this week's part 2 of our 3-part experimentation and format, we lean into that aspect and explore some of the foundational philosophies that guide just one of the teams that are continuously working to iterate and improve on the persistent universe as it prepares to grow in this year's upcoming Alpha 4.0. Now, where last week we met the team, this week it's
still
how
saying
we
this
work.
year. There's a big debate going on. Lots of comments. And I guess this is mainly coming from the renaming of 323.3 to 4.0 or to 324. But a lot of people saw that and thought that meant that 3.24 was getting delayed a bunch and that would push out 4.0 from this year. And at least their target is still this year. I don't know. I don't think that the name change of this patch meant anything in terms of delays, but there is a fairly big debate going on right now whether people think 4.0 will come out this year or will be next year. Interested in hearing what you guys think in chat. Maybe somebody can throw a poll up there. Mods.
Level design with the folks from the Frankfurt level design team.
Nice bar.
Well, level design, it's probably one of the hardest
Hey,
things to
literally Khan is who we're going to watch on the next video. Turkish.
describe in game development.
We take gameplay elements and we take the environment and we just bring all that together.
It is more than the sum of all of its pieces. You can't just kind of speed level design a forest log cabin. That's not enough. Like, what is the player doing there? What does it mean? Why does this thing exist in this space?
That's new swag coming from one of the new factions in the game, Interstellar Transport Guild. Nice suit, buddy.
What can the player do as well?
You've got the environment art
There's
that
your
makes
Crusader starter ship. Sorry.
the art itself. This is not us. We have the gameplay teams that make all the gameplay elements, and this is not us. What we do is we take these two things, we combine them together and make a cohesive environment for you guys.
Prison break route.
We design the space itself, and we also accommodate everything that goes inside of it.
A lot of the things that you use, like hangars, ATC, I hate to say it, transit systems.
Elevators?
Elevator rides.
Is that you?
Wait, you're responsible for the elevators?
Elevators are our problem, yeah.
People type out the worst stuff about these guys. If elevators are their job, people say some bad stuff about elevators. I know they don't work very well, but at least you put a face to the folks that you're telling need to go back to school.
No, we're just a setup site.
If you die in the elevator, that's actually a problem from the coding side. We just we're throwing them under the bus.
Is it possible in a sandbox game to have level design?
Yes, because you have to consider all of the individual constituent pieces and why they need to exist together. You can throw anything in there.
Get kind of a David Tennant vibe from that guy.
You integrate the game, so you have conversations with economy, you have conversations with code, you have conversations with system design, mission design, and you have to figure out how all these pieces, again, stitch together.
So there are 6 principles for good level design.
First is readability. This basically means clarity in your environment.
You're going to make sure within your layouts that everybody can understand where they need to go, what they need to do.
All the affordances need to make sense. The typical one could be, I've got a door in front of me. How do you describe a locked door from an unlocked door?
For example, you're fighting an AI, and they can read easily the elements, the gameplay elements. You need to understand your cover space. You need to find the AI within the space. If the AI is in a black area, you will not see it at all. And this is very important for us. We really focus on this kind of stuff, and we make sure that anything you interact with within the environment, you can see as clear as possible.
The next is flow and leading lines.
It's creating a good composition of all these things, from layout, lighting, some props, a good mix of combat spaces or like combat encounters, and then time for exploration, and then doing a mix between both.
We make sure that you're not going always on a straight line. We make sure that you're not spending 2 hours walking from one space to the other.
In Pyro, you'll come across a lot more players as we funnel them into a certain space with a concentration of missions, for example, or things to do. You know, that is flow to us. On the flow level, that is higher on the chart. And then certain areas will be a bit more on the lower end of your
See a lot of these
leading
like,
lines as a compositional technique.
See a lot of these like back entrances like this in space stations, and I do really hope that there's reasons to go into these areas and they're not just like extra areas to walk around in the space stations. When I was playing, there were a lot of them, but I didn't get to experience any missions that used them. Granted, that usually ends up coming later, but I hope with 4.0 we actually do see stuff that utilizes these locations.
More on the lower end of your pacing. Leading lines as a compositional technique.
Some examples can be you are following the cables from one interactable through to another area to interact with another element. You're being breadcrumbed along, you're being led along these leading lines.
With Pyro Station, you have the core element, you have the arms pointing towards the center. It's a very simple example, but more on a larger scale. But we look at it also on a room basis.
We're trying to direct you through to a discoverable place over here, or trying to direct you through to like a vent. We're using light and cables to navigate you through these spaces.
Third is options. We want to give you guys multiple options so you can complete your objective the way you want it.
In context of our game is giving the player the opportunity to approach certain situations in different ways or get an idea of the situation in the first place.
You have straightforward options, the combat route. You have a more sneaky option for players that don't like to engage in combat so much. Or you can also have like a puzzle route for players that like to do more interesting environment interactions.
Then there is clustering. Clustering also falls into the compositional techniques, or more in the layout side of things.
Clustering means that you start like bringing objects together to create something a bit more natural.
You put importance on things by grouping certain things up into clusters. A specific Pyro example would be the outposts, where you have a big landing pad in the center, and then you have groups of clusters of buildings that are arranged around it, and they form like points of interest by themselves.
We've not always been successful with clustering, but moving forwards into the future, especially with Pyro, we're taking a renewed effort to concentrate and cluster things properly.
Oh yeah, cluster me, baby.
Finally, there's scale and proportion.
The
Scale
clustering,
is important.
from what it sounds like they're saying at least, and this is probably standard stuff, but the clustering is going to be cool because there's not really central locations in this game. Space stations, cities. That's it. Once you get outside of those, even the outposts are just very isolated. Not much of a sense of things going on. Even all of this stuff looks way more communicative than the outposts we have right now. Besides the derelict outposts, those actually do. They look a lot like this.
And in how you vary it, if everything is large, for example, nothing is large anymore.
We are the one that defines all the metrics for FPS, but also for ships. We're talking about ships that have a few meters to some ships that have hundreds of meters. And we need to make sure that the transition from A to B feels always smooth and natural, right?
If you, for example, come from a maintenance corridor or a small little packed little vent and expose yourself to this big room, you'll get a more likely an aha moment.
So we still have a very big open spaces, but condense the gameplay space a bit more. So the players don't have so much options to walk around, but still get like the sense and the immersion of like a big open space.
Proportion is just also feeds into scale.
So you can use proportions to be able to scale up, like what is kind of the background space, what is the foreground space, and what is the midground space of like what is immediately interesting to you as a player and what is in the background that's not yet relevant to you. So you can land at one outpost on Pyro 2 and you can see yourself in a sort of like habitation outpost village. Down the hill you can see there's a refinery area, but the main feature of this place that you were drawn to initially was this massive mining tower.
So that's really important, and that's something they go over quite a bit here in this video we're gonna watch soon. Kind of mentions it. Where does he talk about that? Yeah, this might be something that we just come across naturally, but they're talking a lot more about that sort of idea of like, you get a mission and no, this is not the video. You get a mission and that mission comes from like an outpost, but they're not really telling you, oh, you need to take some stuff and go across the planet and deliver. They're telling you, hey, we've got a radio tower 2 kilometers away. Can you drive out there and repair it? Those kinds of things. We'll hear more about that in this panel that we're about to watch. But I think that's a really key part of the new stuff they're bringing in with Pyro and 4.0 is that the area itself is not just a single area. It's multiple small points of interest that can interact with each other. Hopefully be used for missions.
The main feature of this place that you were drawn to initially was this massive mining tower. These become like your immediate foreground, your midground, and your background. But again, you can always come into your ship and go to this massive mining tower. Therefore, this becomes the new foreground. You're always orbiting it, you're transferring around. This becomes your landmark to orientate yourself around all these other spaces nearby.
Why'd they fly in the terrapin, though? Why'd you even take that out?
Traditionally, in level design, you start out with a pre-production phase. This is where we ideate, conceptualize, we gather references, we do sketches, we do top-down layouts of our brain map, put things together.
We then go into white box, which is literally going into the editor, start mocking things up in 3D, creating the space, and defining where the gameplay elements are. We have a shop on the right, shop on the left, your elevator transit over here. We work at different scales at this point, and we define basically everything in the location, but with very, very basic shapes.
And then we hand it over to art, so the focus lies more on art for gray boxing, making things more pretty, with us still having an eye on it to see that the original concept is still intact.
And then finally we'll move into final art, and the level designers will be able to kind of keep all of these
You don't keep including the "Who Wants Some Noodles" lines.
locations, like the intent of the location is kept consistent. It doesn't veer off too much into suddenly it's too big or too small. This is the original design direction that we wanted from beginning through to end.
Once a location is released, it's not finished for us because there's always maintenance and additions that we do. When there's a new functionality, a new gameplay coming in, we go in and we add them to all the locations. We retrofit the locations. So whenever there is a bug in the PU, we have to maintain these locations. So we would go into new Babbage and fix AI placements or shops not working anymore. But mostly, level design is also about coordinating with every team.
So be it with like lighting, mission team, environment art, audio,
Was
narrative,
that the graphic
they
from?
work more or less
Hold
like
on.
in their pockets.
I swear that's the graphic from the other space station.
Every team.
This little glowing bit, isn't that the graphic from the normal rest stops? Or is that just, am I just thinking that's something else? It looks a lot like it.
So be it with like lighting, mission team, environment art, audio, narrative, they work more or less in their pockets, and then we try to keep an eye on like the big picture to bring everything together and look that everything is coherent and cohesive.
What is important to us, or what we really want you to experience is a nicer flow in the stations. I think what we realized with Stanton is, you just take a ton of elevators from place to place. You kind of want to optimize that for you.
Yay!
Make it a bit more efficient, so you don't spend a lot of time going from A to B.
We are trying to bring, for example, the clinic and the habitation right away into the shopping area and trying to make it much more compact.
At the same time,
So
we
that's-
really want to offer...
That's something we talked about, was like space stations in the game they're like feel so disconnected. You see the outside of the space station, super big, cool. I go and I land in it and it's like 10 feet of space. And now they're trying to make it more compact, but the stations are still pretty big. Now, the inside of the stations in Pyro, from what I've played, are huge compared to the ones in Stanton. So they might be making the spaces more compact, but the actual area inside the station is bigger because they have mission locations, they have abandoned sections, and all other kinds of stuff. But I love that they're taking what they learned from these stations that we've had and they're, applying it to their new model and making it better. It's a bummer it took this long, but it feels kind of like the Star Map, where they knew that they had space stations they were going to make for a new update at some point, and then instead of going back and changing the Stanton ones midway through, they just created their new space stations, and they'll probably use this design philosophy to go back now to the Stanton ones and update it a little more easily. I hope, because Stanton space stations are going to feel old compared to that. Good morning. Welcome in. Just and Potato. Hi. Luna Maria, welcome. Good to see you. Is Pyro going to have stuffies in the gift shop? I hope so. Stuffed humans, probably, because that place is kind of messed up.
Some good gameplay content within the stations, outside of missions that you can go into and discover on your own as you explore.
We try to improve Pyro stations with all the lessons we've got from Stanton.
And now for outposts, each location has to have its own identity. Like, does this outpost fulfill the need for a combat space? Does this outpost fulfill the need for like a social space? Does this outpost fulfill the need for like a puzzle space? All these factors come into play and come into consideration when creating a whole new location.
We want you to be able to discover little points of interest around the outpost. It's kind of feathered. If you come across an outpost, there will be multiple sub-locations around it. Could be like,
dude, that's so much better than what we've had. These are real points of interest, finally.
Villages around it. This could be derelict settlements that are abandoned and you have to go into and can find potentially loot in.
And once you've landed your ship, you are no more than a short walk away from the main reason you've arrived at this outpost, which is to trade. We want to encourage the use of ground vehicles to be able to pick up your cargo that you bought from this place, load up your little Drake mule, drive it over to your ship, load that ship, and then fly out with your goods.
We wanted to create a location that...
Listen to that again.
And find potentially
So did they say they want to make the...
And once you've landed your ship, you are no more than a short walk away from the main reason you've arrived at this outpost, which is to trade.
That's such a strange way to put it. Because he's like, you're a short walk away from where you're getting your cargo, but then they showed a video of a truck driving. Obviously, they're not talking as they watch the video, but it's an interesting piece of B-roll to put to that. The whole idea of needing to transport stuff from a pickup location to the landing pad you're on could be something that determines which outpost you want to go to. Like, maybe there's an outpost that you really like, but it takes forever to get the cargo, so you don't go, versus the one that's not as good, but like the cargo's right next to the landing pad. I'm guessing it'll all be standardized anyways, and pretty much a template that we come across everywhere, but this whole part of the cargo hauling loop that is now becoming a thing because of 324, the part that requires you to go get the cargo and bring it to your ship, it'll be interesting to see how the different outposts handle that.
You are no more than a short walk away from the main reason you've arrived at this outpost, which is to trade. We want to encourage the use of ground vehicles to be able to pick up your cargo that you bought from this place, load up your little Drake mule, drive it over to your ship, load that ship, and then fly out with your goods.
We wanted to create a location that felt real. So you had, the logistic is there. The AI created roads between the different points of interest within the outpost so that it feels logical for a player to walk in or to traverse.
Pyro is always dangerous, so any social
I would love if the AI could use those roads, please.
space can turn into a combat scenario. So you need to be able to duck into cover at a moment's notice, even when you're doing nice, easy trade and socials. So we have to provide you with opportunities for cover and exciting FPS combat scenarios.
There's a lot of things to consider for an open world game that on this scale. You have to account for multiple, situations and have players also be able to deal with all kinds of circumstances. So it is a complex undertaking. It's a challenging one, but this is what we want to account for in Pyro as much as we can.
How about in Stanton though? Like, I do like that they're talking about Pyro, but also talk a little bit about, the retroactive going back and updating Stanton, because Pyro's cool. Pyro's going to be a nice addition to the game, but a lot of us aren't going to spend most of our time in Pyro. It'll be something to go see for that first patch, maybe a couple patches after that to check out new missions and stuff. But one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to with Pyro coming in is all of the changes that they've realized they can make with Pyro that just come down to design and the philosophy of a star system that they can bring back to Stanton to kind of update that feeling too for the more lawful players. Have I made a video about what I think is going to be presented at CitizenCon this year? No, I usually make those the month before CitizenCon because there's so many different ways that could go right now. Good to see you in chat, by the way. Good vibes. Bringing in the good vibes.
Level design matters or is important because we think of a very broad scale and try to craft and create a great experience for you as the player.
Level design ends up being greater than the sum of all of its parts. I get to talk with all these different disciplines at CIG, but also get to kind of like hold the hand of the player and curate that all the way through.
We focus on the player experience. We look at all the features that exist and we try to bring them up all together into a cohesive environment that feels really fun for the players.
Do you always succeed?
No, but it's not always like within our hands, but we always try our best to, within the framework we have, to create like the best possible experience for you guys.
We have questions about the cargo decks.
From our time in Stanton, and we love hearing all the feedback we get from you as players. We want to take that all on board and begin establishing ourselves forwards when we come into Pyro.
What we really want to do also is balance out gameplay with the visuals. I mean, in the past, we've seen a lot of focus being spent on the visuals and less so on the content. This needs to switch around and find an even plane. And level design is just one way we're doing this in Pyro. We as level designers really want to make Pyro and Stanton in the future a great experience for the players. From a flow perspective, boring you less, making things more
Yay, less boring.
As you follow the gameplay loops that you want to follow, and offer you gameplay content that you can just discover on your own.
All right, so now we need to hear these guys talk with the mission design team. Like, we're seeing so much good stuff when it comes to setting up the stage. What content's going to fill these places?
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that level design is a discipline that brings many other aspects of game development together to form what we always hope is a cohesive and enjoyable experience for the player. That the philosophies and precepts that guide their decisions continue to evolve as they learn important lessons from the development of Stanton and, of course, apply it to Pyro. And that Pyro itself continues to inspire an experience that should be markedly different from the one we have today in Stanton. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development with you, and we'll see you all here next week.
It definitely should play different than Stanton. It's a question we're going to be asking quite a bit up until, I guess, maybe the next preview. Who knows? So that was a little look. This just came out yesterday, and that looks at the level design team and what they're talking about. But this what we're about to watch is, and it's not going to be we're not going to watch the whole panel. We'll watch some of this, and maybe we'll, jump into a couple other things. But I don't have too much else planned for today besides this review. But this is going to go a little bit deeper into the actual details of how they're designing these places to feel different than what we've had before. And it's pretty interesting. But before we get to that, thank you. Hey, everybody who came in here while we were watching that. Welcome. Justin Potato, thanks for the follow and you subbed up. I appreciate that a lot. Thanks. Huge question for Rycops in the chat. Won't it be super easy for people to sneak into personal hangars, either by following in elevators or by simply jumping or flying in during player landings? Yes, but then you're going into trespassing. So the probably expectation would be like whoever is in that hangar has the right to shoot and kill you. Once, you know, security systems allow them to take away armistice zones, or you get teleported out as like a halfway method for now. But yeah, it'll be kind of easier to sneak into those hangars. Like if somebody gets into your elevator with you, don't go to your hangar. Think they may show Nyx if server meshing is getting good with Pyro? I think we'll see Nyx at CitizenCon, yeah. Still waiting for the alien ship updates we were told about 4 years ago. Guess they really plan to bring him with Squadron 42. Yeah, those are Squadron 42 updates for sure. Along with that, the Cutlass and the Mustang and stuff. You're curious how the AI will be. It's still terribly stupid and buggy. It will still be terribly stupid and buggy, probably because we won't be running on more than a couple of servers per system. Until they can start to bring more servers into each shard, the AI probably won't be running all that great. Really hope that Pyro has cargo that Stanton doesn't have. Oh, for sure. They will. They definitely will. I think already in the previews we were seeing different types of cargo there. I really hope that they have different materials, right? Minables there. Oh, then you can start to have dangerous mining expeditions that you have to go into Pyro to do in order to sell good in Stanton, and hopefully soon in order to craft and build other things. Just wondering what's stopping you from flying into somebody's hangar using a Pulse or Dragonfly. Nothing right now is stopping you. But that is, I mean, that's just one of many problems that is going to come up from this. Another one is in situations like what they were just showing here. Like in this situation, your cargo's just sitting here, right? Who's to say that somebody's not going to come up and steal that? You're not in a hangar, so you can't stop people from getting there. Like you're talking about personal hangars. Somebody could just fly into here and take all this cargo off of the grid. So there are a lot of these little types of things they're going to have to figure out to make them stop, because we don't have reputation and security in the game yet to be able to do this. So yeah, it's a lot, man. It's a complicated feature. It'd be fun if they do the same as they EU5 with their Matrix game demo using AI speech for NPCs. I read that as Europa Universalis 5. And I'm just imagining the Matrix in a Europa Universalis game, which would be hilarious. Maybe we could walk up to a security guard in a hangar and select an option to have a player removed from that hangar. Maybe we could forcefully remove that player from our hangar. Shoot on sight. But how do you determine shoot on sight capability? Because if you're in this outpost,
Load your cargo that you
shoot on sight basically makes it a no man's land. Like that's scary. If you are in a hangar, that makes sense to me. But out here, how do you determine a player interacting with your cargo that is somebody that you told to come help you versus somebody who just came and stole a box? Is it always going to come down to who's in your party? It's like maybe you just hired somebody from the bar real quick to come grab a box for you. Suddenly they grab the box and the game is like, you can kill this person now. It's a little trolly. Having someone come down and steal your cargo like that would just add emergent gameplay. Would add to the risk reward of getting cargo from there. But like you could be in the safest location possible. If it's still open air, that's kind of a problem. Like I agree, it's nice to be able to have the risk, but come on. If we're trading at legitimate places, nobody wants to be going to an actual place that is run by a respectable group and like they're like, hey man, somebody just came out and stole your boxes, what can we do? That would suck. I get it for like the off the grid locations and kind of stuff though. Cargo looks like it'll be short-term pains until they can sort out the griefing opportunities. It's gonna be short-term painful, yeah. Yeah. You do not have to kill someone to steal stuff. You only need the ability to grab stuff. I don't know what that's in reply to. But yes, you don't have to kill someone to steal the stuff. You can just grab it and go. Sure, respectable places will have turrets and security there. Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. The idea of having security at these places is going to be important. I don't know, that's rough. Even because if you don't have security, and it comes down to the player, at what point can you determine the player can take force? That's a weird one. Think this will be exciting, just very different than space trucking. Oh, this is for sure different than space trucking. I think cargo hauling is going to be split into several different things. You're going to have outpost to outpost kind of missions. You're going to have outpost to space station missions, and then you're going to have like space station to space station, planet to planet missions. Those later ones are what I feel like are space trucking. These short-term missions, you're spending just as much time on the ground and handling your cargo as you are flying the cargo from place to place. So I think there's some... You can really start to get more into your specific style of cargo hauling. Yeah, it'll help people diversify, I think. So many following max money-making guides at each pass. I'm already getting sick of those, man. Every like all of these different videos are like, make $1 million right now, get money fast, and you have the right to do that, but it just ends up bringing I'm not going to call them exploits. It's meta gameplay, I guess. It's whatever the gameplay is sort of pushing at that time. It's just, it makes everybody go towards the same thing more, especially newcomers. You all get kind of driven into the same path of maximum profitability instead of just playing the game. Maybe they have something in mind. Maybe right now it's just testing how it works on a grand scale. Yeah, I'm sure they've got quite a few things that they're thinking they need to add. And like we always talk about, there are systems that just aren't in the game yet. Security. Security is a big one. Not really a need for millions unless you are out to try expensive in-game ships. Yet people keep watching these guides because they join a game, they search for a new player guide, and you know, you go in here and you go new player guide on YouTube, and a bunch of the stuff that pops up is going to be like how to make the most money the quickest. These are all just new player guides. And that ends up being what people click on. Not all the time, but everybody who clicks on those things ends up thinking they need to make millions because that's just what happens in other games. And it can skew the way that people are kind of getting into the game. Do I think we'll see Vega for 1.0? Oh, I don't know. I think Vega's less likely than Odin. Ooh. Hold on a second, folks. There we go. I think Vega is less likely than Odin for 1.0. But who knows? Repetitive meta gameplay grinding is a thing. Hard to resist money. Money. All right, let's look into this. This is a look at the level design in Pyro. Again, a bit more in depth than what we just watched. Same guy though, still Khan.
I will give you an introduction to our locations when it comes to the design, a high-level overview of the design of our locations. I'm going to describe you the processes of our workflow and the goals that we aim to achieve. So, to break down our process a bit. This is what
time is it over there?
Very high level, but it starts out with a pre-production phase, an ideation phase. Here everything starts out in the mind. We bring it down to paper, sketch, write, formulate a plan based on our overall design goals. And then it moves on to the blocking stage. You might have heard of this, like the white box and gray box phase. This essentially contains all of the gameplay.
Wait, I feel like this is actually the same bar we saw in this video. Almost the same bar. When they were putting it together. Where was that? Here. It's like the same location, no? You got the 3 seats down there. You got the cables coming. The 2 decks up above. Yeah, it's the same location. It's just an Easter egg. It's not that important.
Final product. Basically,
Easter
the
egg.
way it's meant to be played. And we test this out with a lot of iteration. And yeah, a lot of testing. And it's basically, the white box is not in a stage where it's presentable, but that comes now. So on the right, as you see, the food court that Adam is going to be showing you later. Yeah, this is the final product, VFX, lighting, everybody had their pass on this. And level design or other designers still maintains the space and makes sure that the systems that get created are being retroactively implemented. All right, so one key aspect of game development in general is the balance of narrative, visuals, and gameplay. So all these interplay, they interconnect, and it's the foundation that runs through all game environments. So it's important to communicate context. And here in this draw-over, you see that narratively, we see sort of a dangerous environment. The spiky shapes here are sort of threatening. We see defensive structures. We can expect some enemy NPCs here, but it's also an old village. Maybe there's some exploration, some loot to be found. And then what's also important is communicating goals. So goals can be the pathways that you take, the gateways that bring you from one step to another, and so on. Hey, whoops. Yep.
I don't know, I get Shadow of Mordor vibes from these outposts. You don't have an issue with people watching videos on how to make money. It's a quick search query of how to play the game. Just like people asking for free money without learning how to make money. When are we getting 100 star systems? Probably never. How long do I think we'll have to wait for the Ironclad to be in game? Years?
And
I
so
hope
on.
not.
Hey, whoops. Yep, there we go. Okay, since we're a sandbox game, accommodating playstyles is pretty important. So playstyles meaning going guns and blazing, shooting at everything and everybody, going more of a stealthy, infiltration-y pathway if you wanted to, but also all the social aspects that you know from Stanton. And to do this, we establish. So one of the core design philosophies is granting the player the freedom of choice to do what they want to do at any point throughout their experience. And we do this by establishing or defining multiple pathways or archetypes that we call primary, secondary, and tertiary pathing. So the first one is pretty straightforward. In a social setting, you have the goal right in front of you, and it's a single goal, such as here in the Habs. In a combat setting, this is very exposed, so it's dangerous to traverse this route. Where it gets more complex is when you have, such as with this outpost here, when you have multiple goals that can be equally important to the player at any given point. This is where we need to have a bit more design put into it with, for example, the landmarks that serve as orientation points. So to help you orientate yourself wherever you are in this location. And leading you to these locations by utilizing shape language and composition. The second path is, these are secondary pathways, so these are alternative routes. And these are options that are offered to you as you traverse the area on the primary path, for example. And so you may know this as a tourist when you go to a new city and you look around the corner and you see an alleyway that sort of looks nice and it evokes your curiosity and you want to investigate. In a combat setting, these are covered approaches or opportunities for you to flank the enemy to get to your goal, which could be this building on that sketch. Yeah.
Or you could just fly a
versus more-
spaceship in and jump out of the back of it on top of the building and go from there. No, the turrets. Turrets, I'd hope.
Open spaces, when you have
Or one of these. Just use this as a wrecking ball and knock some ships out of the sky.
in a combat setting, in open spaces, you tend to be a bit more stationary because you want to feel more secure, unless you're in a vehicle. The third path is tertiary pathing. So these are more hidden infiltration routes, especially discoverable throughout the rundown stations that Anna will be presenting later on. And these are mostly discoverable to the attentive eye. You can explore these, find loot, or different routes to traverse through the station.
We actually see that in the distribution centers. Do it pretty well. Maybe after this we'll go and check that out, because that's a good example of how they have changed this stuff up. Is distribution centers actually do have a little bit more of this sort of detail built in. We'll go and check one out and look at how the distribution centers maybe look a little bit different from what we've already had. Is 4.0 out? I wish. This would be a constant party, this screen, if 4.0 was out right now. Nope. 324 is in Evocati. That's where we are. 4.0 is still ways away. If anybody is desperate for Pyro, check out the current derelict settlements in Stanton, Rappel, Whistler's Crypt, Ghost Hollow. Is Ghost Hollow updated? Like the other ones are?
Environment interactivity. You might have seen this in a previous presentation. It's very important to ground the player to their environment, offering them ways of interaction, being able to change the state of rooms to toy with the AI, or just simply being able to unblock your pathway. Where it gets a bit more complex is when you talk about resource network systems, such as in day one when Torsten mentioned that we are planning to implement this as well in locations. And this will allow the player to engage with their environment in different ways. They will be able to power up or down entities such as turrets, gates, and doors, and also alter life support systems. And also this ties into security systems. So being able to power up or down certain sections of a security system. And security systems in turn will be dependent on security tokens that you will be able to grab from.
All right, y'all. I just put up a poll in both chats. You can vote on when you think Pyro is coming out. Twitch and YouTube, y'all both have it.
From other NPCs in your environment to then gain access to other terminals, to security terminals or other areas. Reputation is a big topic for us, especially with Pyro. So reputation, what does it mean? It means that it's basically your standing, your relationship with factions, and factions are the UEE in Stanton, or outlaw gangs, especially now in Pyro. And this will define your play style within this environment. So it will define how you experience the location that you're in a more social context or in a more combative context. So we talk about reputation gates as well, especially in the later presentations. So in the case of the food court, in the rundown station, we have multiple floors. So the first floor is the gang floor, and that might require you to have a better relationship with the owner of this location, which then will give you unique mission givers that you can go to and accept a mission that are offering you missions themed after the faction or the owner of this location, but also give you access to unique gear, collectibles, ship weapons, and items.
That's kind of like what we saw here. Somewhere here. Where was that? Here. This is probably an in-game reward that you get from running cargo hauling missions enough. You just get a jumpsuit from the trade guild. That's the kind of stuff that they've really started to bring in or I guess emphasize and talk more about since CitizenCon last year is things you can actually earn in the game. This has nothing to do with the level design, but I think that that's still a really important point because it makes a big difference to the game.
I've seen these locations in the demo if you've played it. So to close this all off and move on to the other presentations, the glue behind all of our locations is the content. It is the reason why you go to these locations in the first place, and our main goal right now is to not have that divide between social and gameplay as much as we do in Stanton, but mix it up a little and make that dependent on the reputation that you have with the factions or the owners of these locations. And yeah, we're looking into more content. As you've seen listed there, there's a bunch of new stuff coming as well. With the later presentations, for example, with the logistics hubs in the second portion, we're also looking into rates. But yeah, that's it for me. I will pass it over to Eddie now. Hope you've enjoyed this. Take care. Bye.
All right, so the next part's not going to be as much about design, but I do think it has some important bits because it talks about how they've expanded these locations. We are very used to single building outposts or like 2 or 3 buildings in an outpost that don't really have much function. And one of the things they've seemingly focused on a lot, as we've heard so far today, is that they're trying to build locations with multiple smaller locations within that do have some meaning to them. So this guy is going to explain a lot of how they're starting to do that with scale and what they're aiming to accomplish with that. So far, the vote for Pyro coming out this year on YouTube, we've got 62% think it's coming out this year, 35% think it's coming out next year, 3% think it's coming out last year. Is out of 34 votes. YouTube, how many people are on YouTube right now? 34 votes? Come on, we can vote better than that. Let's go. We got to get some better results than that. How am I supposed to send this into Pew? What's my sample size? 40? When is Pyro coming out on Twitch? 42% say this year. 58% say next year. That's between 19 votes. Wait, how many people are on Twitch? I get more votes when I go out on Facebook polls. Does Facebook do polls? Quality control, good to see you. How you doing? What's the plan after 3.24? Slide us at 3.25. The plan after 3.24 is 4.0. But the plan after 3.23 was 4.0. So now the caveat that you need to know there is 3.24 is not any of the stuff that wasn't already planned for 3.23. Blockade Runner and all of the cargo improvements. So 3.24 is kind of a weird situation sort of patch. But the plan is for 4.0 afterward. So, you know, if 4.0 was going to be coming out next year instead, that would essentially be 6 months on the same patch, which 4.0 would dictate that. Somebody asked, what's hanging up 4.0? It's server meshing. That's it. The only thing required for 4.0 is server meshing. Just like the only thing required for 3.18 was persistent entity streaming. That's why 3.18 took forever. That's why 4.0 is taking forever. And it's why 3.0 took forever. Those are like the 3 patches besides 3.3.5. Those are like the 3 patches that have been content focused, which is why they always get delayed. Other patches don't have to go through that because the update is not dependent on the feature. They can always just push the feature into the next update. That's why they didn't have to delay 3.23 to get cargo in. They just released 3.23 and then put it in 3.24. But 4.0 has to happen with server meshing. And the only thing that has to come with 4.0 is server meshing. So we could see things pushed out, but we will see server meshing when 4.0 comes out. So that's the hang up. And that's really what decides if it comes out this year or next year. I think that they have a good chance of getting it in this year. I think they have a good chance of getting into the PTU this summer still. But until we see more of what they're doing with server meshing, hopefully during this Inside Star Citizen season, who knows? And and because of the way they're doing Inside Star Citizen now, instead of doing a set amount of weeks and then moving on, they're doing episodes every week until the patch comes out. If 4.0 takes 3 months to come out, That's a lot of Inside Star Citizen episodes they're going to have to figure out how to fill up with content, especially on the lead up to CitizenCon. It's going to get weird. It's going to get a little bit weird if 4.0 starts to take a while, because Inside Star Citizen's going to get a bit dry, I think. You betting that 324 is for pre-CitizenCon? You think that 324 is going to take 3 months? What is that, 3 months? July, August, September? That's almost 4 months, you think, that it'll take to go from Ivacati to live? You think I talk so much about Pyro for so many years, it feels old. Yeah. If server meshing doesn't work, Star Citizen is done for. The idea of Star Citizen, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. If server meshing doesn't work, Star Citizen is in a lot of trouble. And that's been the anxiety for the last 7 years, ever since they really set our sights on server meshing. That's why it's a lot of anxiety for people. Because, you know, you can have this seamless, always loading environment with the game, but if you can't break that environment up into multiple servers that allow for systems to actually run, then you're in a lot of trouble. You got to start breaking up areas into different loaded sections, loading screens, instanced zones. I'm not a game dev, but like from what they've said about this, that's kind of, yeah, that's where it would head. Yeah, say hello to loading screens if that's the case, but I don't know. I don't know what would happen to the game if server meshing didn't work. 3 months for 324 to be live in the PU and stable is pretty realistic. Have we ever had something go from Ivacati to live in 3 months? I think 318 maybe. .323 was just before IAE. 322? Yeah, I don't think the stability is going to determine whether or not it goes live, though. It's not... I don't think that's what they're going to use as their metric for whether or not 324 should be going to live. I think as long as the game is not crashing, they'll push it. All right. So here is a little more talk about how these levels are being designed for Pyro. And we'll probably skip through this a little bit because I do want to get in and check out a distribution center with you guys.
Course eventually, but that is the reason you're not going to see some of them in the builds today. I just wanted to get ahead of the comments a little bit there. So with that said, what am I going to be talking about? Well,
oh, the Twitch poll ended, by the way, with 62% voting this year. That's 16 votes, and 38% voting. Sorry, 62% voting next year with 16 votes, and 38% voting this year with 10 votes. Smallest poll I've ever run. Thank you, everybody who voted. Appreciate you.
I'm really excited to show you that the hard work that the Sandbox One team have been doing to expand our new outpost locations. I'm going to start by going over how we've expanded the library and what that means we can now achieve with the new locations, and then how we achieve that variety from the library by categorizing our locations into both archetypes and themes, and what that means for you as a player. So, I don't know if you remember this, but at SitCon in 2021, we showed this new skin, this one, library of modules look like at that.
This is cool. It shows how much they... So you guys remember this demo, right? This was Life in the Verse, I believe. And it had a pretty cool demo here. We got to see a lot of the stuff that we started to see over the last couple of years. Cloud's still looking better here. God, the clouds look so good here.
Very pretty looking.
But as you go further in, you get to the base. One of the best sounding landings in Star Citizen. I don't know if the 400i already sounds like this, but I love the way this sounds, from the landing gear setting down to the way the engine winds down, all that. Listen to this. Good stuff.
That was a really good approach from James there. Good landing.
It's good.
That was a
Good
solid
times.
3 out of 10.
So this is the outpost that we got to see in 2021 when they first gave us a good look at the new sort of ideas they had for Pyro and the direction they wanted it to go in.
Weathered, to fit into these climates.
And it's solid.
And, what we're seeing here is first boots on the ground.
Abdi, welcome, buddy. Good to see you. Happy Friday to you.
I think it looks great, especially in contrast to what we're seeing here is like actual AI on the terrain, walking about, going about their business. And is that an AA turret there?
It is. And radio comms towers and all these other elements that we want to make sure that are interactive for the player and allows them to go and explore or use to their advantage. We want them to be able to interact with these different items.
Here you can see various outpost modules, to the right there, we've got the garage unit. You can see the infrastructure on the roof.
Yeah,
the
skin on the 400's in the game.
Archway here kind of signifies, the main entrance, the primary entrance to the main social module. I think the airlocks look great. Fits in with the art style beautifully.
What's up, Papa?
The team did a great job on this.
Papa Gamer.
And then we've seen the concept art previously in the day, and then, here you can see it translated in-game, and I think it absolutely looks fantastic,
Yeah, I love these locations. They've got, everybody keeps calling it out, but they've got a very strong vibe of the kind of frontier locations we see in Star Wars. And I think Star Citizen's doing a great job of building itself a design language that diversifies between systems, but, 10, 15 years from now when they've built this stuff out and it's very noticeable in the game everywhere you go, will Star Citizen have that significant recognition in the popular world, in pop culture, that they're pouring so much money into building out these designs, into putting a lot of effort and thought and money into making an IP that's strong, that has a lot of different elements. I mean, if you go back here and just look at all of the design work they're talking about here, and this is not just, it's not small stuff either. This dude is, hold on, looking for, oh no, I'm looking for the space stations segment, huh? So a couple of these people, I don't know everybody, but this guy in particular I know. I believe he's former Ubisoft, and there are a few people in the Montreal studio who came from big studios like that, but you see people from all over the industry coming into this game, and they're putting a lot of effort into bringing in good talent and building out something that is recognizable, and I hope it pays off for them long term. 10 to 15 years from now, your unborn child will be a teenager. Well, I mean, what were people thinking when they were making Star Wars? Or Lord of the Rings? Or any, I'm not trying to draw a comparison to that, but when you set out to make a big IP like this, you don't want it to disappear, This has to be something that people can still reference in 2 decades, or else what's the point? So 10 to 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, however long it's going to be. If I was putting this much work into an IP like this, I would want it to persist that long. I'd want it to have a name and have recognition for that long, in the same way that, Halo does. You don't know if the game will have much of a pop culture influence. It doesn't need to influence pop culture. I'm just talking about recognition. You see a gigantic spaceship coming out of a space station, and you kind of get vibes of Homeworld. But Homeworld didn't necessarily need to change everything for that to happen. An MMO must live for at least 20 years? Well, yeah, there's also that. The upkeep to keep it around for 15 years will be massive. That's kind of the expectation, though, right? MMOs are expensive. You mean Skyrim? Large spaceships in Skyrim? You'd travel with no money, barely surviving on high rent as a space musician anytime. Skyrim is a good example of a game that touched a lot of hearts. It's yeah, fantasy I think is harder to do that in. There's so much fantasy always coming out, games and movies and comics and all that kind of stuff. It almost might be harder to set yourself apart in that world. But overall, yeah, I look forward to seeing how this ages over time. But yeah, that was the initial version of Pyro we saw. So looking at, you know, how much they kind of built there, the collection we saw of buildings and interiors in that demo, and then listen to what he has to say about the expansion there.
Between each one. And this is what that library of modules looked like at that point. We'd established our main building modules as well as some of our larger buildings and a number of smaller secondary and dressing and standalone modules. But each outpost couldn't be too large without there being some obvious repetition between the modules used. So let's have a look at that library today. So,
bit of an expansion.
In order to achieve that greater visual and design delta between each outpost and have them not feel like exact clones of one another, we've massively expanded our module library in terms of breadth and depth. And what
I wish they would show us.
We go broad.
I wish they would show us what the Stanton Outpost library looks like compared to this, because I bet you it is much smaller than this, and it's been around for like 8 years. They started doing Stanton stuff 8 years ago. And I think we'll already see more variety in Pyro with this kind of a set.
Making more modules with different purposes. And we go deep by creating multiple thematic overlays for each of those modules as well. I'll go into what that means a little bit in a minute. But the challenge of a sandbox location like this, as you can see, it's not about building a single unique location. That can be quite straightforward, to be fair. It's about giving our artists and designers the building blocks, the affordance to build multiple locations that all feel somewhat different, even if they do share that same basic DNA. So it's about creating both the ingredients at the same time as the recipes, and making sure all of those flavors work in harmony with one another for both visuals and gameplay. So every individual part has to take into consideration all of those design philosophies. So every single module has to take into consideration. Using this expanded library, we've been able to increase the individual location size because there's less of that obvious repetition between buildings within any single location. And we can't really call some of these large locations outposts anymore. They become something more like settlements and imply a larger and more established community. Now, as a player, it will mean a lot more to explore and do at any single individual location with a localized and personal feeling mission types that might see you moving around a single settlement to complete objectives or doing short hop missions between clusters of settlements on a single planet. So you might head up to a ridge to repair some wind turbines. You could counter an outlaw attack from a neighboring outpost, or on the opposite side, you might be stealing or destroying vehicles for the criminal gang that you're working for. But in the art department, we always say, show, don't tell. So let's stop looking at slides.
Man, I wonder how possible it's going to be to betray factions you work with. Like if factions give you missions that put you in an actual position to mess around with their valuables and like either mess up a base or ruin, I don't know, their flow. Can you sabotage a faction and does it make a difference? Because I would love to sign up to like be working with pirate gangs and stuff and then be able to get high in the ranks and then do something particular that you couldn't do if you weren't high in the ranks that like really hurts them. But I don't think they're going to build in the idea of like these factions actually having control or losing that control and stuff like that. Maybe they will, but I don't know. Would love to see it. Anyways, keep watching. I'll be right back.
Let's have a look at some of the locations in game.
Nice. And so just for clarity, I didn't see any of that. I went to the bathroom. But you can kind of see in these locations that localization they've been talking about. And he mentioned it on this slide, localized mission content. We heard about it just in that ISC. And then you can see it here. There's like a base here, right? And then there's clearly a little path that you're supposed to drive down all the way down. And there's like another small base here you can barely see in the distance. This is such a monumental change to how this game's going to play. Because localized gameplay is like one of the worst things about this game is doing some gameplay and then having to quantum travel 5 minutes to go do more gameplay. And one of the things that people talk about is like, this game doesn't respect your time. It makes you fly here and here and here and here to get gameplay instead of just letting you play the game. It's the answer to it. And it took them a long time to start doing it, but it looks like with Pyro, that's where things are headed.
So what flavors of Outpost did we just see there? Well, we categorize them in two different ways, as I said, and then we mix and match those categories together to provide that variation. Now, the first and primary category is the archetype, and they provide that core gameplay hook and define the main function of a settlement. So scrapyards have a landing pit module for repairs and refueling. Mining operations can have a refinery module and ore extractors for resource and commodity trading. And trading posts themselves allow a broader range of item purchases through the dedicated trade building module.
I would like... So I would really like for them to give us an actual list of the archetypes. I don't know if this is supposed to be all of them. Trading posts, scrapyards, mining operations, cargo, salvage, and flora and fauna. What's the difference between salvage and scrapyards? Any takes? What's the difference between a trading post and cargo? Is cargo specifically like work-wise, and then trading post is like you're shopping? It'd be nice to know if this was an actual list of them, or if they were just giving examples here, or what exactly that is.
Repairs and refueling. Mining operations can have a refinery module and ore extractors for resource and commodity trading. And trading posts themselves allow a broader range of item purchases through the dedicated trade building module. And I mentioned earlier some more like general mission types that you might find that would be agnostic of archetype. And the archetypes themselves reflect that primary gameplay function of a settlement, but there's also a middle layer. Of course, we don't want these locations to just be a glorified shop or repair station. So there's to be more secondary activities to do locally to an outpost that are also defined by its archetype. So you may find scrapyards can offer salvage-related gameplay and missions. Trading posts can also offer delivery missions or hauling and cargo gameplay, and farms can offer crops.
Okay, so
types, broader range of items.
They literally said scrapyards can do cargo, or scrapyards can do salvage. Trading can do cargo. So that's two archetypes right there, plus mining, and then one more with flora and fauna. Is that the idea?
Trading posts can also offer delivery missions or hauling and cargo gameplay, and farms can offer crops and fauna as resources for gathering or trading. So with archetypes as our primary category, in addition, we mix in a secondary category, and these are the thematic overlays. Now, at the moment, we have two main themes. Internally, we call these independent and outlaw. So themes offer additional variation on top of the archetypes to inform the look and feel of a location, not just visually, but which people you'll interact with there, how they'll respond to you based on your rep, what types of missions you'll have available to take on. So themes don't change the fundamental architecture of a space or the archetype of a location, but they do drastically alter the mood and feel, as well as altering the gameplay experience significantly. And again, let's take a look at the first of our themes, our independent theme.
Did I catch SCL today? No, we've been doing this. Probably go over SCL tomorrow or on Monday. Jeez, these look so much... The locations themselves look so much better than what we have now, but I can't help but think like how much am I actually doing in this room? Do I get to interact with anything? Talk to any of those NPCs? Questions. Farming. There will be farming in this game, by the way. Oh, a bar fight? Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally.
Cool. Thank you.
Why can't people just put things back where they found them?
So, as a neutral player, the independent theme presents a much more social, visual, and gameplay experience. The primary visual read across both themes, so across both Outlaw and Independent, comes from those common architectural forms, and they're generally all more rounded and soft in shape, and the building manufacture techniques are more robust and primitive, with single-story dwellings built from stucco and bare metal. But for this theme specifically, we use soft textiles, warm lighting and color palettes, foliage, decoration, that layer on top of those utilitarian structures to give that sense of home. And I use the word home for our independent theme quite a lot because we really want to get that feeling that this is home for the people that live there despite those harsh realities of frontier life. And in contrast to that, we have a theme that lies in a direct opposition to the independence, which we call the Outlaw theme. So let's take a look at that now as well.
But, like, we got to see one of these for Stanton, man. Outlaw and independent, sure. What about military or corporate theme? Like, what's going on with Stanton? I'm sorry. It's kind of weird to be looking at Pyro and be like, what's going on with Stanton when we don't even have Pyro yet? But this gets me more and more interested in what's going to happen in the system where I actually play. Pyro's going to be like my every once in a while kind of place. Ketchup Gamer, have you read the lore of Star Citizen? I actually think there are potential TV series and movies in this universe that would be better than Squadron 42 as a game. I find that the backdrop this game sets is good enough to set a backdrop for them to explore stories that could be super interesting. Because, like, this could be a game that has stories that play out like Firefly. It could be a game that has stories that play out like Battlestar Galactica. It could have games that play out, or stories that play out like Stargate. Like, there are so many different periods of the lore in this game that they already have written out. I could just see a lot of potential for them to dive deeper into those things outside of the plot of Squadron 42 specifically to bring in some more interest into this stuff. For instance, this is a corporate hellscape, right? This is like a cyberpunk space game, the way that these companies just drive the government forward and dictate how the whole universe works. That's a lot, like, that really vibes with people right now too. That's a heavy theme. Corporations suck. I'm talking about you, Adobe. You suck. Except for the fact that you created competition in your space. Thank you for getting people like DaVinci Resolve to come and give us superior products. I appreciate you. You feel like players would make their own TV and or movie series in the game? Yeah, there's some really, really good machinima already. You want to watch a TV series about anti-Hurston revolutionaries like an Andor? That'd be cool. Hurston has a really interesting history in this game. Did you know at one point they tried to push for basically a lifelong service license for their employees? Big Adobe coming for Tomato now. Cool. Maybe they'll answer my questions. Tell me why their program keeps crashing. Come at me, Big Adobe. We all know Adobe sucks. That's almost the oldest news. Right behind, man, I don't even know. Take a pick. Pick a company. Can work as long as you bring in the fun and don't be too dry. Gotta be real dry, man. Astro Historian's where you get most of your lore. Samesies. Astro Historian does amazing lore. Always gonna suggest that to folks. Oh yeah, there's also the Kurthak. Very unknown faction. Wow. Dude, imagine these kinds of scenes with global illumination. Like, that looks so good. Oh. Okay, if I know anything about Star Citizen, this grenade totally would kill you. Astro is a goat. Heard I did VA work for him. Yeah, I did a little bit of voice for Pub last year, I think it was.
Functional settlements being completely overrun by the various criminals.
We talk all the time, we're good friends.
The system. And visually, we have themes of a regressed and subverted civilization. So we layer on top of the architecture these spiked and aggressive forms, and we have evidence of a squalid living arrangements, and lighting comes from fires or poorly maintained fixtures. Some spaces are going to be recognizable as deformed versions of the independent theme, but some have been completely changed to more nefarious purposes. And while both themes employ all of the various alternative pathing and traversal considerations that Khan detailed just earlier, the outlaw spaces are weighted more towards combat. But just because these spaces are more dangerous and the experience can be more combative, that doesn't mean that the archetype of the outpost is lost. So if you as a player...
so is this like a human refinery? Are there people in here? What's going on there? Again, Shadow of Mordor vibes, which is just the weirdest thing I would not expect to be drawing comparisons to in this game.
Choose to be a criminal working up your rep with a headhunter gang, you'd be welcome at the trading posts, and you'd be able to buy and sell items or take on missions. But you probably won't then be very welcome at the independent themed locations, and that's where you'd get your combat experiences. So while the outlaw theme looks very different, the functionality of those archetypes still remain. So I've talked about the kinds of outposts we've been hard at work on, and I hope you've enjoyed checking them out over the last 2 days in the Pyro demo. It's really made me very pleased to see people playing our content at last, so thank you for that. But where are we heading from here? Well, I hope it should be obvious that we're going to get these out for the first Pyro release. We still have some final optimization and polish passes to do across the whole library. And then we're also going to be expanding the amount of these locations throughout Pyro and beyond. And our tools allow us to do that very quickly now. And we've got the library as well to do it. And the new outposts are not limited to the Pyro system. They're completely system agnostic, so you can expect to see these outposts in other systems as well.
Doesn't say Stanton, though.
We're going to look to add more.
I'm thinking we'll see these kinds of outposts in Nyx.
Ingredients, more of those modules to the library as well, to further expand the variety and depth you'll be able to see at these new locations. We want to encourage more on-foot gameplay within a small ecosystem of a planet to give that more localized and personal feeling experience. Our goal with these locations, as with many of the others we're going to hear about today, is to continue to work on the gameplay so that every location offers a rich playground to explore. And I guess I'd like to finish just by thanking everyone for listening today. It's really great to see you all. I'm going to pass you over to Nick.
Totally said we weren't going to watch that whole thing, and then we did. So this is really just looking at the new outposts. We already have those in Stanton. And this is looking at space stations, which I guess we can listen to this a little bit. I don't think I'm actually going to jump into the game. How long is this? About 10 minutes. Let's see. This is about the space stations coming. So this is another thing that's going to change a lot with 4.0. They have been working on space stations for a while. Like, we go back to that 2021 CitizenCon, and you'll see this guy is actually telling us about the ideas behind how they developed them. Once I can find that. Getting there. Getting there. No, this is talking about outposts. Space stations are back here. Yeah, here we go.
Like there before, but you'll be able to go and explore the different decks and be able to go in.
So this is 3 years ago. This is when this was all mostly just concept art and a little bit of in-game art and work so far.
Meet new people, meet the frontier lifestyle, enjoy it.
Okay, so before we go to the inside of the stations, we're going to jump now to Eric, and he's going to go in a bit more detail, the concept development process taken when looking at the exteriors.
Hi, I'm Eric Gagnon, Principal Concept Artist on Star Citizen. The goal of that initial step of sketch development is to create something.
So Star Citizen, they've acquired a lot of good talent in Montreal. This is one of the guys.
Not invited. Dangerous, damaged by asteroids, and surrounded by floating debris. Hiding place for outlaw, looks old, decrepit. Lawless, no security force here. Approach at your own risk. Industrial look, messy, but not abandoned. Some parts are wrecked, but under repair and raw looking. I like to use the black and white sketches to start. It allows us to go very quickly and focus on the shape only.
Okay, so that's
first.
Interior is more interesting.
Exterior concept phase excites you as much as we had fun to create it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Looks great.
That's the exterior. So right now we're going to go from the outside and we're going to jump to the interior. Before we really started exploring anything, one of the core concepts that was discussing as a group was the idea of power and the idea of heat. Now, we've got like this big interior layout of this, maybe this old mining station. How would they have adapted the space? You know, they would have, like, okay, we need power here. Okay, that will create heat. So we started thinking about, okay, where would the heat lamps be? And then where would light come from? So just the principal concept of power creating heat, creating light, that was pretty much the core of the start of the visual development process.
And I love concept art. I don't know about all you. I love books with concept art in them. Just like looking through it, it's so nice to see how people imagine spaces.
So when we started talking about it from a design side, we needed to make sure that we were covering certain.
But I like gameplay more, just to be clear.
Just basic needs for the player. Everything's bare bones. It could be that it used to be a clothing store, now it's a food shop, and so they've converted it. The gangs moved in. You know, it's not what it used to be, and but you see that old skeleton there.
One of the things that definitely we've been talking about with Pyro that we didn't really get to see in Stanton is the idea of the gang presence. So, you know, that idea that they're the sort of local law in the area. So, you know, you might see gang members coming and shaking down some of these shopkeepers for protection money or rent, you know, type thing.
Or even shaking down the player.
Yeah, which would be very fun. not for me, but.
So when we started to explore some of the side areas, there were other things, other factors that we had to cover. Habitation, clinics, players need a place to sleep, to log out, as well as players need a way to get themselves healed. And then we started taking the same treatment or similar treatment that we were doing with the main market area and started to take it into the hubs and how they were possibly repurposed, or the clinics and how those were possibly.
Holston Coop, my man, how you doing?
So,
good to see you in chat, dude.
Just make sure that everything felt cohesive in its raw, natural form. In the way that we have the station structured, we haven't let players go into like living quarters of where the people that lived at the station would be, or even into the lower decks where the power, where the gravity generators are. And this is where we're going to start introducing these areas, and it opens up new opportunities for the players to go explore and do new things. But it's also areas that the gang might want to protect.
Yeah, it offers a lot of possibilities for mission content, whether it's actually maybe working for the gang itself or other kind of little small things you could do inside there to really kind of, drive you deep into the bowels of this thing.
Okay, so that's a little look at the insides of the stations, but now we'll jump to Christian, and Christian is going to take us on a little bit of a deeper dive into the concept development process of the inside of the stations.
Right? So we were thinking about verticality.
So this is like where they were back in 2021.
Traverse all of those interesting areas that are, in the end, pretty ominous, right? So think about, there are some people just screwing off side panels on the wall, or
Holston, you got a new job, dude.
Screwing off,
Congratulations.
You would see all of the maintenance areas behind it. So we'd see a lot of struts, a lot of.
That sign back there is just like, get the f out.
You would see all of the
doesn't matter who you are, just get out.
Behind it. So we'd see a lot of struts, a lot of working areas. There's cables hanging. So.
Hey, Michael Stevens, I saw you put out a message in chat asking for some help. There are a couple answers in chat if you didn't get a chance to see them.
Those were the very first sketches where we could see what those eventually could evolve into. And we also started then slowly with some loose 3D sketches. So getting everything into 3D, and it's pretty much evolved over time where we could talk to the environment guys, and we were asking for some of the current rest stops geo and some of the textures, and then getting them into 3D, and we were just changing up all of the props, all of the side panels, or all of the.
You can tell this is the space station from Stanton. Like, this is the food court from Stanton. You can kind of see what it looks like down here in the corner, but clearly they're taking those same space stations and using them to save some time on developing the base level before they edit it and make it look like, something that's old and decrepit.
Environment. So we could, looking back at the references, then convey this feeling. We could introduce more dirt. We could introduce some damaged panels, side panels, and pretty much explore this side area, right? And the big advantage of this is that we can make the environment how we like. So one thing that we did is like kill all the lights because we don't need lighting. We want to create our own lighting. And this is what I said earlier. The current rest stops are super bright. They're family friendly. But now we want to make it ominous. We want to make it dark mood. We want to make it super dark with the players like always feeling kind of in danger, and especially with the gang members in mind, right? So this would allow us to create one of the very early, or one of the earlier 3D explorations, which then lead to one of the final concept arts, or the final implementation of this. So when we were at the point where we were kind of okay, or where we thought like, okay, this is an environment that we want to see, then we took care about the last 20%. So the last 20% in this case means having a final render and painting over. So we were just painting over in Photoshop and doing some more refinements for the mood and the lighting. We were painting in some of the decaling and some of the graffitis, because it is ultimately easier to do all these things in 2D than in 3D and caring about the materials. So we were able to just refine the final concept in this regard. And this
the most obscure details that, like, as a non-artist, I would just never even consider these things that they're doing.
straight process from A to B. It was an iterating process. So in between, if you're looking at some of the other concepts, for example, the barriers, we were at one point thinking about what would happen if we introduce barriers that the gang members then would set up on one point. So what does that mean for you as a player? What is the player doing, or what is the player doing at this point? So will he encounter these gang members? Will he try to find a way around? Is he going to use some of the ladders or the underground vents, for example? So we were changing the concepts here and there, more or less. And this leads to, in the end, having a nice variety of concepts or different types of concepts that we then could cherry pick the best parts of it, or in other teams, the environment team, the design team could cherry pick the best ideas from those concepts. And this was pretty much a rundown of the concept development for the Pyro space station's interior.
Thanks, Christiana.
Cool. Okay, so this was a lot of conversation about space stations, just where they were 3 years ago. Now here's kind of an update on them just this last year, talking about what, like, that was a lot of concept and design talk. This is now taking that same talk, but applying it to what the actual game's going to play like, and thinking about the mechanics that they're working on or have already put into the game in the last couple of years and how those affect the gameplay. So this is a much more realistic look at space stations, but again, just an important change in locations going into 4.0 that hopefully translates back to Stanton at some point.
What are Pyro rest stop stations? Well, these are stations reinvented. These have new themes, archetypes, and gameplay to support new and interesting experiences. Aside from the social aspects, there is gameplay and exploration on the location. I've hoped you had a chance to play the demo over the past couple of days. I know I've spoken to a few of you. It's pretty good, right? Yeah? It was a sneak peek of our current progress. Let's kick off with an overview of the Pyro system. For the Pyro system release, we plan on 6 planets and 26 stations, including jump point stations that connect for Stanton and future systems such as Magnus. Rest stop stations are either in rundown or abandoned states. Citizens of Pyro, the Rough and Ready Outlaws, and Xenothreat may control these. Our focus today will on the Rough and Ready owned Pyrotech Amalgamated Fuel and Resource Station, Planet 2, Lagrange Point 4, otherwise known as Checkmate Station.
Checkmate. And as somebody who has gotten the chance to try out Pyro, I got to try it at CitizenCon. These space stations are huge. Like as much space as a landing zone, if not more. It's quite impressive. And they have missions on them. You can run missions in the space station itself. Here's like the interior fires that they were just talking about in that last panel. The way that heat is kind of used to control the attention of the system. See a lot of the stuff they were referencing in here. It's that same place that we keep seeing. Yeah, when I got into this game, I was in college. Now I'm in my 30s.
To create a richer experience from rundown stations, we have 3 key points. So increased reputation gives you access to new areas, unique gear, and mission givers. It also relates to basic functions such as the hub clinics, which need at least a neutral standing with their owners. Combat can take place anywhere, including social areas. numerous options for environment traversal and enhanced environmental interactions. We aim to include new substation areas such as the workers area, lower deck, and maintenance areas. These areas will offer unique content, more environment interactivity, and interconnection between areas. Our journey begins when the player arrives in the entry deck view room. The entry deck serves as the first barrier between the outside world and the interior of the station. Some inhabitants are prevented from going inside and are stuck here with no means of getting out. Slums are formed beneath the bridge, smuggling routes established. Some shopkeepers will sell you water and food on your way into and out of the station. Let's have a look.
Who wants some noodles? That one line, this gets me so freaking excited for the alternative world where the ownership of the station will actually change based on what you do. That would be so cool. Although that is a thing in Ubisoft games. And a lot of the development of this stuff came from former Ubisoft people. Not to say there's any connection there, but I wouldn't be mad if we could change who owns these space stations. That'd be cool. Love this song. Can an orc take over a station? I guess, if you kill everybody, yeah. God, these stations have such a better feel on the interior. This looks more like the space stations we see from outside, you know?
Khan touched on reputation earlier. Let's see how that is applied to the stations. So how does the reputation gate in the entry deck affect gameplay? What happens if we have good reputation? So if you had good reputation, you could go straight through. This is no fuss, and it's the quickest way to maneuver through the station. However, you've got to put the time and the effort in to get to this point. What happens if you neutral reputation? So you might be waved through, maybe you have to pay a bribe, and you don't want to pay, so you're going to have to find an alternate pathing. Or you're going to have to build up your reputation. If you have bad reputation, and for all you naughty ones out there, I know some of you exist, this applies to you. In short, you're going to have a tough time, but you have options. So stealth via other pathways might be one of those options. You build your reputation up from scratch, or you could probably fight. Let's focus on those alternate pathways. The modules in the station are broken up into several traversal areas. As with the other location archetypes, we define these spaces as secondary or tertiary routes, as opposed to the more official primary paths. Most modules are interconnected with vents and maintenance shafts. These reward the players with infiltration and exploration paths, as well as potential loot. So what alternative routes exist to access the station? We'll offer the opportunity to access the station through multiple.
Oh, I don't even know if I could find you the source. I think we went over this when I first covered this during CitizenCon. EVA entrance. Let's see if that gives us the proper thing. This is old. This is coming from something maybe not that old. Oh man, wonder if I have that saved myself in my own files. Let's see. It's gonna be an old reference. An oldie but a goodie. Got it. Oh, God bless this ridiculous archive of Star Citizen footage. So this is this is 2020.
Up in the space above our corp
In
and
ISC.
throughout the Stanton system, concept artists are working out new EVA access hatches for space stations to support the upcoming
Look at this.
EVA mission.
Isn't that basically, yeah, that's like almost exactly what they ended up going with, which makes sense since, you know, that's their art.
Intended to take players out onto the surface of these mammoth structures for investigation, repair, and potentially even combat. We'll learn more as the feature develops.
So yeah, I think
Access hatch. EVA
this was something I got really excited for back then, because I thought, I mean, have you guys tried to get into a space station EVAing right now? Because you can't. You have to have somebody in a hangar open the door for you, or you have to land on a pad, which, you know, the pad makes it easier. But before they had landing pads out there, it was really hard to get into a space station. So I thought this was going to be like a new thing they brought into the Stanton stations to bring in more functionality and opportunities. We never saw them. So it was cool to see them pop back up here. And this happens with so many different things. Just they were working on something, it disappeared, we kind of thought it was gone, and then boom, shows back up.
EVA points on the exterior. It gives you the choice on how to tackle missions and reputation issues.
Forgot PO so fast. I mean, PO was a nice exception, but besides that, the rest stop space stations, as far as I remember, didn't have ways to get in other than having somebody open the hangar for you until they started adding these pads. But maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe they always had pads.
Expensive entries allow the player to circumvent the ATC loop completely.
Smuggling.
When your reputation with the owners would normally prevent you from going through more official ways. These server spaces that provide content aligned or against the owners of the station. The maintenance hatch access points are a new common sublocation to the stations. The stations are planned to house maintenance areas that increase the interconnection between all the different sub-areas of the station.
See,
they act as alternative pathways the player can take to traverse from the entrance area to the Galleria, for example. Now let's have a look at our main social space.
There you go, Shifty. There's your maintenance level. Like these space stations make Stantons look like a play place because they actually have the considerations for all this kind of stuff.
Entrance area to the Galleria, for example. Now let's have a look at our main social space. The market. A central location for the controlling faction, it houses all their nefarious activities. You can participate in their endeavors if you have the right rep. Let's have a look at some of those key features.
Oh, I'd like to have a ground base in this game. More variety there. This is a super big one. Engineering missions on space stations, I think, will make up a lot of, like maintenance missions, will probably make up a lot of the interesting things we can do on there. What's up, Fierce Stare? They're like, look, you can eat it. But first.
Thank you. So the market is a social hub and a good example of mixing social and gameplay space, as mentioned by Khan earlier. Another reputation gate can be found in the market. The ground floor is open to the common public. The upper floor is reserved to rough and ready outlaws and their associates. If you have increased reputation, you can access this area, which gives you access to premium items, top-tier mission givers, and access to new areas. We plan to house mission givers in both tiers that will give you unique jobs to further your reputation and fame across Pyro. Now let's have a look at another theme. Abandoned is a new, non-social location theme. Let's have a quick look at the current abandoned area on Checkmate.
This is another thing that they introduced a long time ago on the roadmap, I think 2019, and then it disappeared. And it was like, okay, what's going to happen with these? And they were probably like, why would we make abandoned ones in Stanton when we could do it in Pyro and it would make a lot more sense? I do hope we see some small space stations abandoned in Stanton, though.
Thank you. So we have entire abandoned stations as separate locations. On top of that, there are abandoned areas within the rundown stations, much like the ones you probably see in the demo. There will be around 15 of these around the Pyro system. These are accessible through airlocks and breaches or other means. We aim to enhance all the space locations.
So 26 space stations, but 15 abandoned locations amongst those space stations. So even though there feels like it might be quite a few space stations, remember the system itself is more than twice the size of Stanton. A lot of these space stations are owned by gangs that won't even help you, and a lot of them have abandoned sections that won't have much of a services benefit to you.
With a lot more gameplay content. Loot runs, exploration, creatures, missions of various types with PvE.
Oh, did he just say fucking creatures?
Loot runs, exploration, creatures, missions.
What kind of creatures, sir? Like I might actually just not go. If they're about to start dropping creatures in to space stations without saying anything, I may just not ever go. Oh my god. Who knows though what they mean or when that happens, but the creatures would be cool. I don't think they're talking about the worms because those weren't in the abandoned section. That was in the regular space station section. He's talking about the abandoned space stations now. Facehuggers. Hey, let's be real, okay? Star Citizen has brought out a ship that harkens back to the X-Wing, and I know it's not based on the X-Wing. Obviously, there's a lot of differences there. But the X-Wing and the other ship from that one fiction IP that looks kind of like the Scorpius, they've made the Reclaimer, which clearly takes a lot of inspiration from the Nostromo tugboat, because literally in the trailer they made for that thing, you can see the similar shots. Actually, I might actually have that picture somewhere. Let me see. Reclaimer. Are you here anywhere? I did. I knew I made this. Look at this. Look, wait. Oh, stop. Okay. Too many Reclaimer stops. Stop it. Too many files with the word Reclaimer in them. I'll just give it a second. Yeah, they're not shy about the MSR coming from inspiration from the Millennium Falcon. There are so many references to pop culture in this and other popular science fiction IPs. I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to put together some kind of an alien that is reminiscent of facehuggers that is terrifying and I never want to encounter. What can you do at the abandoned ones? Can you land and maybe manually refuel from what you could scavenge at the risk of running into pirates? That'd be cool. Broken down ships you can siphon some fuel out of. You like Pyro's aesthetic, but you dislike the flaring star's frequency or how it was done during the test to remind you of a supernova time loop in Outer Wilds. Ooh, good game. Rough mechanic. Anyways, okay, now they've finished loading. So check this out. This comes straight from the trailer for the Reclaimer. Like, you get very alien vibes from this shot. I don't know if I put in the other shot here. This might just be all of, yeah. So this is basically a whole segment that looks at the Reclaimer when it was first coming out. But if you look at this shot, and then you look at the shot from Alien, you can see that they were kind of going for that. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but this is a conspiracy I'm willing to sit with. Because then there's also like the interior of this ship has that same sort of padding and just overall vibe that you feel from Alien. I mean, do they show the freaking mess hall? Because if anything else, the mess hall is pretty convincing. I don't think I have any shots of it. There's a sink. If you've ever been interested in what a Reclaimer sink looks like. Hallway, main deck. Nah, I don't have a shot of the mess hall. But it's got the table that looks a lot like the table in Alien too. Oh yeah, you can see Van Dool in this video. It's like isn't it in the background when the light flashes on it? But yeah, Reclaimer, going for that vibe. So, creatures in the game. Okay. All right, then. It's already a pretty creepy game when you get into the
gameplay content.
Abandoned areas.
Loot runs, exploration, creatures, missions of various types with PvE and PvP content, just to name a few. We're also laying a focus on environment interactivity with potential retrofitting of occupied stations. With the future addition of security systems and the resource network system, we will have the means to further improve the experience within these spaces and offer new challenges. With power, life support, and gravity playing a key role to give the player a unique experience, especially in abandoned stations. So, what do Pyro rest stop stations bring to the game? So lots more variety in space stations, with more gameplay opportunities within a station location. Opportunities for exploration, hidden areas, multiple options for access or traversal. These are faction-owned, and reputation will affect the location and gameplay. These feature lots of new mission opportunities within social space and multiplayer opportunities for combat on location. So I hope you have enjoyed this sample of what stations will offer and had a chance to have a go on the demo the past couple of days. That concludes the Living on Edge presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. So that was Living on the Edge, which I think gives us a good expansion and idea of where level design and locations in the game are going with 4.0 and Pyro. And it's a lot. I mean, what are the main takeaways we got from this? I think the biggest ones are that they are focusing on compacting the area that we have gameplay now. They want players to be able to do more things in a single space or in a small area. That is super important, and I'm happy to see them doing that with Pyro. I thought this would be something that they might try to do by scaling up after they got a couple systems in. But to see the localized gameplay be such a heavy emphasis, I mean, almost every single thing that they presented during what we went over today, they talked about the idea of being able to run missions and interact with the environment in those places. So that's a big one. Another big one seems to be making sure that places make sense in terms of their themes, their archetype. In the monthly report, we saw that they're setting up economic producers, consumers, and transformers, which would be your shops, your mining outposts, your refineries, your factories. So they're starting to add more reason to different locations. And they're clustering locations a little bit, making them closer together even outside of just the localized gameplay for each of those places. Overall, it sounds like they're focusing on bringing more interesting things to do to points of interest than we've had before. That's for sure. Now we just need to know what Missions is doing with it. That's like a big part of this equation. We can have these amazing locales and areas, but if they're not giving us missions that actually give us varieties in gameplay, I don't want to jump in the game and be like, ooh, do I run a box to this place or do I shoot a person in this place? I want to be like, where do I want to go today and what will I find there? And it would be nice to have more missions in these more variety locations that give you a little bit of that feeling again. You'll be spending a lot of time in Pyro exploring, at least until death becomes more problematic. Yeah, I'll be hitting up Pyro. I'll be hitting up Pyro more. Mrs. Tomato. Okay. We've got a crazy bug situation going on back home, but I'm actually just about done, folks. So I'm going to go save Mrs. Tomato. The bug has eaten you. I just saw a bunch of messages from Mrs. Tomato that we are being invaded by some kind of crazy bug monster. But I'm wrapping up, folks. I think this is a decent overview of what's going to happen with locations in the near future at 4.0, and we'll probably get another ISC that looks deeper into this stuff this season. But I do get the feeling that this is partially preparation for how long a season of ISC we might be about to have. Which makes sense, because we're going to have 2 months at least until... that's bare minimum 2 months until 4.0 would hit live servers, right? I think it's going to be longer than that. But even at this moment, they would need to have like 10 episodes of ISC ready to go. And because 4.0 was the topic of CitizenCon and the topic of many videos before, that's going to be hard to make entertaining. So I don't know how this season of Inside Star Citizen is going to be, but that's our first look at it, or a second look. Anyways, cheers. Thank you all for being here. Much love to y'all. Taryn, I see you. Good to see you in chat, buddy. Location, location, location. Amen. I hope you all had a wonderful day. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Avocado, good to see you. 07s. Sorry you got in here right at the closing. Appreciate the heck out of all of you. Thank you for being here for this one. And I'm just gonna plug again. I did put out a video yesterday about the new weapons coming into Star Citizen. YouTube has decided to not present it to anybody, so I'm doing the work myself. Thanks, YouTube. If you want to check it out, just talking about some of the FPS weapon updates that are coming to Star Citizen and how they're going to change in 4.0. So I hope you enjoy that. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. I appreciate you all, and I'm going to send you all on to my man Astropub, Astro Historian. Go in there and ask him when the next full lore of Star Citizen video is coming out, because I want it. I miss it. I need more. I need more lore. And I'll see you all tomorrow. We're going to be back tomorrow with some gameplay. Gun Rush. If you're in the org, check it out on Discord. RSVP, come join me. We're going to be playing a lot of FPS tomorrow. Y'all have a great one. I appreciate you. Urgent Hush. Thank you so much. Appreciate your kind words. And I am bad at saying goodbye. But now we're done. Now we're going to say goodbye. Anyways, bye everybody. Have a great weekend. Go eat something yummy. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.